James Monroe, the last of the Virginia dynasty and the final founding father to serve as president, took office on a wave of nationalistic fervor following the War of 1812. With the Federalist Party in ruins, a Boston newspaper famously christened the period the Era of Good Feelings. Monroe was widely popular, even running for re-election in 1820, virtually unopposed. He sought to eliminate political parties altogether, creating a veneer of unity. This appearance of harmony, however, was deceptive, masking deep economic anxieties and the growing, ominous sectional divide over the issue of slavery. The good feelings were soon shattered by the Panic of 1819, the nation's first major economic depression. It was caused by rampant land speculation and a collapse in the price of cotton, leading to widespread bank failures and foreclosures. Monroe gave the nation its most famous foreign policy declaration. If you want to see how this era of good feelings almost tore the country apart, hit like and subscribe. The nation was increasingly splitting along geographic lines: the industrializing North, the agrarian slaveholding South, and the rapidly expanding West, each with competing priorities. This was the rise of sectionalism. The sectional crisis erupted in 1819 when the territory of Missouri applied for admission to the Union as a slave state. At the time, the nation was perfectly balanced, with 11 free states and 11 slave states. Northern politicians vehemently opposed admitting Missouri as a slave state. Representative James Talmadge proposed an amendment that would prohibit the further introduction of slaves into Missouri and gradually emancipate those already there. The debate was fierce. Northerners argued against the expansion of slavery on moral grounds, while Southerners countered with arguments based on property rights and state sovereignty. Threats of disunion and civil war were openly voiced. A resolution came in 1820 through the legislative skill of House Speaker Henry Clay, the Great Compromiser. The resulting Missouri Compromise temporarily diffused the crisis with three key provisions. First, Missouri was admitted as a slave state. Second, to maintain the sectional balance, Maine, which had been a part of Massachusetts, was admitted as a free state. Third, and most critically, slavery was prohibited in all remaining territory of the Louisiana Purchase north of the latitude line 36 degrees 30 minutes. The compromise satisfied no one completely and institutionalized the sectional divide. Thomas Jefferson recognized its ominous nature, calling the line drawn across the continent a fire bell in the night that would one day lead to the nation's destruction. Monroe's presidency is most famous for the foreign policy declaration that bears his name. Across Latin America, colonies had successfully revolted and won their independence from Spain. The United States and Great Britain feared that European monarchies might intervene to help Spain reclaim its lost empire. Great Britain proposed a joint declaration, but Monroe's brilliant Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, argued forcefully against it. He warned that a joint declaration would make the U.S. look like a cockboat in the wake of a British man of war. Adams insisted the United States must make its own unilateral statement. Monroe agreed, and in his annual message to Congress in December 1823, he laid out the principles that would become the Monroe Doctrine. The doctrine had two key components. First, it declared that the American continents were henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers. Second, it stated that the U.S. would view any attempt by European powers to interfere in the affairs of the newly independent nations of the Western Hemisphere as a hostile act. At the time, this was an audacious statement, as the U.S. military was small. The doctrine's immediate effectiveness relied on the unspoken reality that the powerful British Royal Navy shared the same goal of keeping other European powers out of the Americas. Over the decades, as American power grew, The Monroe Doctrine evolved from a statement of principle into a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy, used to justify American dominance throughout the Western Hemisphere. Monroe's administration also oversaw significant territorial expansion. Through the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819, skillfully negotiated by John Quincy Adams, Spain ceded Florida to the United States. Monroe himself was a figure who bridged the revolutionary generation and the new era. In a final, strange historical coincidence, he died on July 4, 1831, exactly 5 years to the day after the deaths of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. The Monroe Presidency, initially called the Era of Good Feelings, was a period of intense nationalism and crucial territorial expansion, but ultimately revealed the fragility of the Union through the sectional crisis over slavery that Thomas Jefferson feared would destroy the nation. The collapse of the Federalist Party and the rise of sectional identity set the stage for the dramatic, populist politics that would follow under the next president, Andrew Jackson. The tensions over nullification and states' rights laid bare by the Missouri Compromise would soon confront the next administration. Our next video is Part 6, John Quincy Adams, a visionary out of time. Question for the comments. What do you think was more significant for America's future, the Missouri Compromise line or the Monroe Doctrine? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the presidents that forged the nation. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious.